Hey everyone, welcome back to Receipts Ready. This story had me absolutely shook. I, 29F, finally landed my dream job at this prestigious marketing firm after years of rebuilding my career but when I walked into that corner office for my first day, I literally froze. Sitting behind the desk was Marcus Chen, 42M. The same Marcus Chen who destroyed my entire career 5 years ago. I know this sounds like some twisted movie plot, but I swear this actually happened to me. Let me give you some background because this gets so much worse. 5 years ago, I was working at this smaller agency where Marcus was the creative director. I was young, ambitious, and honestly kind of naive. I had developed this incredible campaign for our biggest client that would have made my career But the night before the presentation, Marcus called me into his office. He told me there were some issues with my work and that he would handle the presentation instead. The next morning, I watched him present my entire campaign word for word to the client. When I tried to speak up, he cut me off and said I was just an intern who helped with research. That campaign won 3 industry awards. Marcus got promoted to VP. And me? I got fired 2 weeks later for being difficult. So there I was 5 years later, staring at the man who stole my work and ruined my reputation. He looked up from his computer and his face went completely white. Then he smiled this fake corporate smile and acted like we were old friends catching up. He told me how excited he was to work together again and that he was sure this would be a great opportunity for me. I wanted to walk out right then, but I needed this job. The past 5 years had been brutal trying to rebuild my career after he blacklisted me in the industry. But here's where it gets insane. Within my first week, Marcus started pulling the exact same garbage he did years ago. He would ask me to stay late working on presentations, then present them to clients as his own ideas the next day. He started scheduling important meetings when I was out of the office. He even had his assistant tell other departments that I was just a junior associate, not the senior strategist I was hired as. The worst part was watching my coworkers start to treat me differently. They began excluding me from project discussions and acting like I was some kind of intern. I realized Marcus was doing this on purpose. He saw me as a threat because I knew the truth about his rise to success. That's when I decided I wasn't going to be his victim again. This time, I was keeping receipts on everything. So I started documenting every single thing Marcus did. Every email, every meeting, every time he stole my work or tried to sabotage me. I created a whole folder on my personal laptop with screenshots, recordings, and detailed notes. Meanwhile, Marcus was getting bolder with his sabotage. He started giving me impossible deadlines, then telling upper management I was struggling to keep up. He assigned me to work on pitches for clients, then mysteriously my access to the presentation software would stop working right before meetings. But the breaking point came during this huge pitch for a pharmaceutical company. I had worked for 3 weeks straight developing this comprehensive strategy that I knew could land us $1 million contract. The night before the presentation, Marcus called me into his office again. He told me there had been a change of plans and that he would be presenting instead because the client preferred to work with senior leadership. I watched him copy my entire presentation onto his laptop while telling me how much he appreciated my research assistance. That's when I knew I had him. Because this time, I had been recording everything on my phone. Every conversation, every meeting, every time he stole my work. And I had been sending copies of all my original work to my personal email before showing him anything. The presentation was scheduled for the next morning. But Marcus had no idea what was coming for him. So, the morning of the big presentation, I got to the office extra early. The client meeting was at 10, but I had a different meeting scheduled first. At 8:30, I was sitting in the conference room with our CEO, the head of HR, and the legal department. I laid out everything. 5 years of stolen work, the systematic sabotage, the retaliation, all of it. I showed them the recordings of Marcus literally stealing my presentation the night before. I had emails proving I had developed the entire campaign. I even had testimony from my former coworkers who had witnessed what happened at my old job. The CEO's face was getting redder by the minute. Apparently, this wasn't the first complaint they'd received about Marcus, but no one had ever come forward with actual evidence before. At exactly 10 o'clock, Marcus walked into the conference room ready to give my presentation to the pharmaceutical client. Instead, he found the CEO, HR, and me sitting there waiting for him. The look on his face was priceless. The CEO told him to sit down and asked him to explain how he had developed the campaign he was about to present. Marcus started giving this whole spiel about his creative process and market research. That's when I pulled out my laptop and showed them the timestamps on my original files. Every single slide, every piece of research, every strategy point had been created by me, weeks before Marcus ever saw it. Then they played the recording from the night before. So Marcus went completely silent as his own voice played through the conference room speakers. You could hear him telling me how he was taking over my presentation and dismissing all my work as just research assistance. His face went from confident to panicked in about 30 seconds. The CEO asked him directly if he had created the campaign or if I had. Marcus tried to backtrack and claim it was a collaborative effort, but the evidence was overwhelming. Every email, every timestamp, every piece of documentation proved that I had done all the work. That's when HR brought up his pattern of behavior. Apparently, 3 other employees had filed complaints about Marcus taking credit for their work over the past 2 years. But without concrete proof, nothing had been done. Now they had everything they needed. The CEO made the decision on the spot. Marcus was terminated immediately for theft of intellectual property and workplace harassment. Security escorted him out of the building within an hour. But here's the best part. The pharmaceutical client had been rescheduled for later that afternoon. The CEO asked me if I wanted to present my campaign myself. I walked into that boardroom and delivered the presentation I had worked so hard on. We landed the $1 million contract. 2 weeks later, I got promoted to Marcus's old position as creative director. The campaign I developed ended up winning industry recognition and completely restored my reputation. So Marcus tried to reach out to me a few months later through LinkedIn. He sent me this long message about how everything had been a misunderstanding and asking if I could put in a good word for him somewhere. I didn't even respond. I found out through industry contacts that he's been struggling to find work ever since. Word travels fast in our field, and everyone knows what really happened now. Several former colleagues reached out to tell me they always suspected he was stealing people's work but never had proof. The crazy part is that if Marcus had just treated me fairly from the beginning, none of this would have happened. He could have mentored me, taken partial credit for guiding my work, and we both could have succeeded. Instead, his greed and insecurity cost him everything. As for me, I'm thriving in my new role. I've built an amazing team, and I make sure to give credit where credit is due. I never want anyone to experience what I went through. Sometimes I think about how different my life would have been if I hadn't walked into that office 5 years later. But I'm glad it happened this way. I got my revenge, my career back. And most importantly, I proved to myself that I'm stronger than I ever thought possible. This one really got to me because workplace bullies like Marcus think they can just destroy people's careers without consequences. But karma has a way of catching up eventually. If you enjoyed this story, smash that like button. Thanks for watching.